I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to episode 155 of Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we have an interview with Jennifer Dornbush. Enjoy.
Jennifer Dornbush is a screenwriter, author, international speaker, and forensic specialist. As she says, I grew up around death. The television or movie screen is the closest most people will ever come to witnessing the forensic world. But Jennifer was raised in it as the daughter of a small-town medical examiner whose office was in their home. There were body parts in the fridge. She investigated her first fatality, an airplane crash, when she was 8 years old, picking up pieces of skull with her father, who simply saw it as an anatomy lesson. The first of many coroner lessons she experienced over 2 decades. After exploring journalism and high school teaching, Jennifer turned seriously to screenwriting, where she began to connect her coroner world to her writing. She sought out a degree at the Forensic Science Academy in Los Angeles to gain more forensic training and earned a unique kinship with LA's top CSIs, fingerprint specialists, DNA scientists, and detectives. Jennifer is a member of the Writers Guild of America, Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and FBI Citizens Academy alumni. She teaches screenwriting and mentors aspiring writers. And she has a great sense of gallows humor. Her latest book is Hole in the Woods. July 1989. In a sleepy Michigan town, high school grad Nina Laramie heads out with her friends and is never seen alive again. Months later, her skeleton is found near a remote party spot in the forest. The ME determines Nina has been brutally raped and bludgeoned to death. Fear and anger ripple through this tight-knit community when the case goes cold. 30 years later, Riley St. James, a Detroit PD assigned to Nina's case, is determined to get her first big cold case win, despite having a similar past to the victim. Relying on her investigative prowess and gut instinct, Riley tracks down a witness who saw Nina Laramie's murder. But as the truth comes to light, Riley must face the killers who want their secret to stay in the hole in the woods. Based on the 1989 true-life murder case of Shannon Siders for Newaygo County, Michigan. After the case went dormant, a Michigan cold case team formed in 2011 and uncovered new evidence that enabled them to arrest, try, and convict the killers, who were sent to prison for Shannon's murder in 2015.
We would like to welcome Jennifer Dornbush to the program. She has a thriller out that is a real nail-biter, and it's called Hole in the Woods. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. So nice to be here.
We'd like to learn a little bit more about you and what led you down your path. And I was reading in your bio that you investigated your first fatality at the age of 8, which, wow. And did you ever consider any other career, and what led you to the role of a forensic consultant? I know it's a lot, but
So I grew up in West Michigan, where my father was a physician. He had his own practice, but he also was medical examiner for 3 counties. So it spanned quite a large area. And the office was in our home. So from a very young age, I was privy to death investigation and forensics in all its many and gory forms and interesting forms. Everything he did came home. All the files were at home, videos. The county did not have a place to store things like blood samples or tissue samples, so they were all stored at our home. My mom did all of the accounting and office management. If morticians or family members or police needed information from our office, they came to our house. It was a very hands-on forensic world that I lived in. So the first case was basically an airplane crash, and my dad's work, there was not a separation between work life and home life. Everything just sort of flowed because that's how he had to manage it. The night after this crash, the next morning, we were all in town as a family, and he wanted to take a look at the airfield now that it was light out. It had been dark and stormy that night that the plane crashed, and now it was bright and sunny, and he wanted to make sure he got everything. My sister and I joined him on the airfield to look for any parts or pieces that might have been missed, and we did find some. So that's why I say I did my first case at age 8. This is just how life was in our home. Again, there was sort of no separation between work life and home life. And I really didn't think much of it until I was a teenager. And then you're kind of like, wait a minute, this is kind of weird. And then you're kind of become real self-conscious and like, what if people find out about this? Are they going to be my friend? I kind of hid it. I really didn't talk about it with my friends. And it wasn't for a very long time. I pursued other things. I went off to college in Chicago. I pursued public relations for a while, worked for social service agencies. Then I went back and got a master's and started teaching college and then eventually high school. So for a good 10 years after college, I was working, just a working gal, and really hadn't thought about this world a lot. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, and I worked in journalism for a while as well. And when I started to say, okay, I'm going to take my writing seriously, I'm going to get the proper training, I wanted to become a screenwriter. So I went to LA and took classes and started to get involved in the community and in the business. And that's when I really started to connect my very broad forensic past to my present and what I was writing. Because, you know, when you first start to become a writer, you're sitting there thinking, what am I writing about? You're generating ideas, and a lot of my ideas tended to fall towards this crime, thriller, mystery genre. And I realized as I started to unpack all this, I had a lifetime of stories that I didn't even realize I had. And that's when it all sort of awakened for me, and I started to connect my past to my present. So.
What a childhood. I'm kind of envious.
Maybe not if you've grown up that way. No.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's pretty gory at times.
Well, I read your book, The Coroner, and I absolutely loved it. And we recently, over the past year, had Bruce Goldfarb on our program, who wrote the book about Frances Glessner Lee.
Oh, I love that story. Oh.
Yes. Oh, her story is amazing. And you can listen to the episode where we interviewed him. He's really something. We've had the honor of getting to see them twice.
Oh my gosh, I so want to see those someday.
Yeah, it's really something. But One of the topics we talked to him about was the role of coroners in states and how there's still not enough medical examiners in place as a role. What are your thoughts on that?
I could not agree more with him. When you look at the state of our death investigation in our country, it's frightening if you really look at it. And now it's 10 years ago, NPR did a whole study on death investigation in America. And it's really frightening because we have this dual system of coroners, but then we also have a medical examiner system. And each state and each county even can be different in terms of if it's a coroner that runs that county or a medical examiner. And as you guys know, because you delved into this, coroners don't have the authority to do autopsies. Only medical examiners do. But coroners have the authority to determine cause of death. And they don't have to necessarily get an autopsy done. So If the coroner is shady, they could just say, well, this was a suicide and maybe it was a murder, but no one's ever going to challenge that unless they know better or have knowledge of something to challenge that. So that death certificate will go down as a suicide when it might not have been at all. I think things are a little bit different in bigger cities versus smaller areas. I've seen the systems in both, the system in LA, and then I know the small town systems pretty well, but there's not enough people because coroners are an elected position. It's not a position people are clamoring after. It's not very glamorous, doesn't pay very well. And medical examiners are typically, you're going to find those, in your bigger cities or your university hospitals, and they're pretty much just doing autopsies. They're typically not always going out to investigate. Sometimes, yes, my dad did. My dad was a medical examiner, so he did do all the investigations. But I think having seen this world over the course of 30 plus years, and like as a family, we would go to medical examiner conventions. I remember going to these and meeting people like me and my family, and there's not enough. It's getting a little better, but they're not paid well. Medical examiners have to be doctors, often they're forensic pathologists, and the pay for that is not the same as if you're going to become, a surgeon or even a general practitioner. So it's hard to get good, qualified, professional doctors to want to step into that position. It's very challenging.
But a coroner can be Joe Blow from around the corner who runs the auto repair shop.
Totally. You and I we could run coroner. And what do we know, right?
It's scary.
It's scary. Thank you. It's very scary. And when I speak, I always ask people, do you guys know the difference between a coroner and a medical examiner? And 90% or more people don't. This is the difference in their shock to find out that, your local mechanic could run for coroner and saying how people died.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Until we read Bruce Goldfarb's book, I had no idea.
We didn't know that.
and he goes through the whole history of it.
I'm just in love with her, with Frances Lee. At some point, I'd love to do a screenplay or a TV series on her. Anyway, so
we would watch it.
Okay. She's totally on my list. I have.
I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a John Waters. You can get it on YouTube, and he gets real close into the dioramas, and it's really.
This is how I research. I talk to people. Just for you guys or any other listeners, this NPR investigation, it's several parts. Again, it's called Death Investigation in America. It is 10 years old now, but things have not changed much in 10 years in our death investigation system. So it's worth taking a look at.
Cool. We will definitely look that up, and we'll put that in our show notes so our listeners can find it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's take a look at the hole in the woods. What was it about Shannon Sider's crime that made you want to write this book?
That is such a good question. First of all, the area in which I grew up, rural, farming, community, beautiful area, lakes, rivers, just salt of the earth people who care for each other, know each other. Everybody's kind of connected, right? Within just a few degrees of separation or less. It's a calm, quiet, beautiful area. When this horrific crime happened, it shook our community. Things like this just didn't happen. Shannon and I, we're the same age. We both had just graduated from high school. I didn't know her, though, because we went to different high schools, and we did not hang in the same circle of friends. But when it happened, it hit home because it was like, this is a girl who could be me, right? Who's my age. And this is a community where these things don't happen. How did this happen? And it was just honestly very scary and very confusing. And it put a real dark cloud over our community. And because my father did the autopsy, we were privy to this case from the very, very, very beginning, right when her body was eventually found. Or the remains, actually. So we, as a family, tracked this case until it got solved for 25 years.
Why do you think it took 25 years? People were pretty sure they knew who committed the crime.
Yeah, there's several reasons, and they're very good ones. For one, we're talking about a time where DNA